Okay guys, now we'll show you how to assemble the SSQ22 back together. We will start with the stock again, which is fairly easy. You just slide them on top of each other and put the screws in. And that's number 2. Now we will continue with the trigger unit. First we take this sear, make sure that the spring is still in there. Could fall out, it should hold, but it can fall out. Put it here in place. Now we take one of the longer and thinner pins, as there are a couple of different pins, but they will not fit anyways if they're not the correct dimensions. So I'm going to put this pin here. We're going to continue here. Also, just like this pin, it's a little bit thinner and longer. Now push the sear down a little bit to make sure that everything is in its correct place. So far this looks pretty good. Yeah. Before putting the trigger back in, make sure that you also take the fire selector switch, as you have to put them in together. In this case, make sure that the cut here looks up. Press this lever here down, put them together. And now you can fiddle it in. You can already drop, at this stage you can already drop the fire selector switch, as it will stay in place. Now you have to fiddle the trigger in a little bit. All right. Press the trigger. So this goes up. Now the spring, make sure that the open area is down and just fiddle it in right into this hole. Okay, the spring is in. Now grab the spring on the other loop and just pull it to this pin, put it over it. Now, to put this part in, this is a little bit tricky, but there is an easy solution for that. Just find any tool that would fit into this hole, put the spring on it, pull it back until you can see the hole. Now just put the pin right here, and it should stop it from flying off. In here, you should see that there is a little gap. This is where we align this pin. Just press it in. You will need to push it in a little bit so you can align everything. So now I'm in a good position. Once we are here, we just push down the spring, and it should be aligned. It could still happen that this spring flies off, but this should not really be the case. If you pushed it down far enough, it should stay in place as well. Now we're basically done with the trigger unit. We can put the lid on. If the pins do not align right away from the beginning, this is not a problem. Just make sure to press the lid on it properly so everything is closed from all sides. Then you can turn it around, maintain the pressure, then push the pins in. Okay, make sure that none of the pins are sticking out either way, because this could cause some trouble later. Since we're here, let's make sure that everything works as it should. I'm going to pull this back, pull the trigger, everything works. Now we're going to check if the safety works as well. I'm going to turn the fire selector switch to safe. This should block it from moving back. This is a good sign. I'll open it again, pull it back, engage the safety again, pull the trigger, nothing is happening. I will switch to fire. Everything works perfectly. Now we will continue with the blowback unit. First we need to start with the nozzle and the inlet. Like so, just drop it in until it gets into its place. Now, before putting this in, we can see there is a loop with the spring. We need to make sure that this loop is free, as we're going to align it with the holes here on the side. And then secure it with this pin. I would recommend looking right into the light so I can clearly see that both are aligned properly. Here you can see it's at the right spot. I will take the pin. Okay, now hold the pin in, as it could just fall out by itself. It's not our intention. And this is how you can check if everything is properly aligned in there. Keep your fingers on the pin so it doesn't fall out, and just put it in here. Okay, now the pin can't fall out anymore. Just push it in. Now before we continue putting in the spring pin, we need to make sure, as you can see here, there's a little obstruction in there. We need to make sure that we push it all the way in. You can take any little tool and just push it in. Okay, this should be enough. Can test it one more time. This was the blowback unit. Now we'll take a look at the upper receiver again. First we're going to start with the bolt catch. Here we have the spring and the lever itself. The spring has a little curve here. The curve should go right here. So the hole in the lever and the curve of the spring can be aligned together. In the next step, we will just put it right into this hole where it belongs. Now getting this part into its place can be a little tricky sometimes. Okay. Now what we're trying to do is to align the spring, this hole, and this hole. Because we need to put this little pin back in from the inside. It means what we're going to do is we're going to pull everything back till we see that it's somewhat aligned. And take any tool, push it in there, make sure that everything is aligned. You can also look from the top and you'll be able to see that the spring is in place and the lever itself as well. As soon as you got that, put your finger on the inside and press it in as hard as you can so it doesn't move anymore. Now we take the pin. Now here make sure that the serrations of the pin look up and insert it from the inside. Okay, now we will put the charging handle back in place. This can also be a little bit tricky, but I'll show you a trick how it works easily. First, you're going to take the spring and the guide rod, and you can see over here in the back we have a stopper. This should stay in the back. Now hold the spring like a syringe. The charging handle should be inserted in this position. So hold it like this and turn it up a little bit until you can see the hole here. Pull it to the back. Now press it in like a syringe. and let it rest here on the top. Keep holding the charging handle. Now take any tool. I will recommend taking tweezers. Go behind the stopper and push it in. Then press it down until it's in the correct location in here. And that's it. Now we're going to put in the blowback unit. To do so, please just pull the charging handle back and hold it here with your finger. Now make sure that the nozzle is pointing to the front. Now we need to play around a little bit with the charging handle. Now I know it's snapped into place. And it's done. Now we're going to put the trigger unit back in place, like so. Oh, I can see that I forgot to put in the screws first. So the long screw, long screw, long screw, and the short screw here. The pins are holding the trigger box so well together that I completely forgot to put the screws back in. And now it really is the time to put the trigger unit back in place, like so. Okay, this is done. Now we will continue with the barrel assembly. Now make sure that the bucking is properly seated in its position. As you can see, we have the opening here, and we have the area where the TDC will press down. They should be on top of each other. Now make sure that the step here on the bucking goes right into this opening here from the inside. You can see it here. Sometimes we have to twist it a little bit. Now I can feel that it's in the correct position. Now we will close both parts down. You need to go as far until you can see the ridges here from the inner barrel, because this is where the C-clip will go. Okay, here we can also see that the threads for the set screws later are also aligned, so everything is perfect. Now we can take this, put it here. When putting the set screws in, make sure not to over tighten them. You could damage the inner barrel and it's really not necessary. All you need to do is turn them in until you feel that it stops, which is here, and just tighten it a little bit more. That's it. 2 fingers is more than enough. Same thing on the other side. It stops here. I'm turning it a little bit more, and that's it. There is no spacer in the outer barrel. This is not necessary, because as you can see, we have the O-ring here. It goes all the way in here and is being held in place by the end of the outer barrel. Now we will connect the barrel assembly to the upper. First, we need to make sure that the inner barrel and outer barrel are in the correct position. You can guide yourself by these holes. Those two here should meet right with those 2 holes here. Now about the knob we talked about before, don't forget to put it back in, otherwise you will not be able to apply any hop-up. When inserting it back, make sure that the hole looks up. Otherwise the hop-up wheel will not be able to get in there. Now hold this up. Gently put it into its position. Now you can turn it around. Now we're going to put back the outer barrel fastener. Right here. You might need to push the outer barrel in a little bit so the holes align in here. Now we're going to put the rail back on top. I said before, make sure that the O-ring is still here, as it tends to get lost. If it keeps falling off, just put it here where it belongs, on top of the nub. Now you can put the rail back in its place and hold it there. As we said before, we have different screw sizes and lengths. We're going to start with the longest screws from the front. Don't tighten it all the way yet. We will do this in the end. Now you can start to tighten them. On the hop-up wheel. At the beginning you might have to press it in a little bit to get past the O-ring. Now you can start screwing it in. Now we can put it back in its stock. When doing so, please be careful not to snap off your fingers over here. Just keep them all outside. All the fingers should be safe. And you're good to go. Now first you're going to take the pin. I'm going to screw from the bottom. Now the fire selector switch, as we said before, the one on the right side had the little metal ball there. I'm going to turn the fire selector switch to fire, because for me it's easier to put the lever back in this position. You also might want to put something underneath the fire selector switch because it will keep falling down. Yeah, that should do it. Now I will put this ball right in here. There is a little indentation in here. There are actually 3 of them. I will put the ball right here. There we go. Now I recommend preparing the correct tool from the very beginning. This will make things easier. That was one. You'll feel that there's a little bit of a wiggle. This is absolutely fine. This is not a problem. Now we can take the other side. Make sure it's in the correct position. Okay, let's make sure that everything works as it should. Safety engaged, safety off, everything works as it should. Perfect. That's exactly how it should be. This was the assembly of the SSQ22. Thank you very much for watching.